Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Selling Greenville, your favorite real estate podcast here in the upstate of South Carolina. I'm your host, as always, Stan McCune, realtor here in Greenville. All of my contact information is in the show notes. If you need to reach me, if you need to buy a house, if you need to sell a house, let me know. And just a reminder, as always, if you are not subscribed to the show, make sure that you do, in fact, subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Please leave a rating and a review if you have not already done so. I don't know where it is on the other apps, but I know in Apple, if you scroll down, you'll see a place where you can just hit 5 stars, where you can just write a short review. And I would appreciate if you guys could do that to get the show out to as many people as possible. All right, today we're going to hop right into a discussion about one of my favorite things. You guys know that I like to complain about our local government because our local government oftentimes causes more harm than good when it comes to the local real estate community. And today we're going to be talking about permitting and codes and enforcement, all of those different things. Because we have a lot of what I like to call clipboard warriors here in Greenville that their entire life consists of simply trying to find people that are, God forbid, doing updates to their homes without permitting. And this is one of the most frustrating things about home ownership is the need to get permits on just about everything. Now, I say just about everything because not every single item requires permitting. But that being said, the list is pretty extensive, and really, the county or the city could basically call you for doing just about anything without getting it permitted. Aside from like painting, something very basic like that. Now, the idea of requiring permits makes some sense. I'm not going to pretend like it makes no sense. It does make some sense when it comes to, for instance, building new construction. We saw a tragedy in Florida a few months ago when an apartment building collapsed that obviously had some issues, had obviously some problems when probably it was originally built. Maybe they hadn't kept up with that. I didn't read a ton about it, so I don't know all the details, but that is the value of permitting, is to ensure that things like that don't happen, to ensure that homes are being built the right way, that they are structurally sound, that everything is done properly. But the idea of permitting, it has had a bit of a concept creep, so to speak, where it's now extended to so many other things. Now you're required to have so many outlets everywhere and all these different things that really the market should decide that, in my opinion. I don't feel like the county or the city or the state or any government should decide how many outlets a room has. But unfortunately, that is the situation we find ourselves in. And here's where it becomes tricky. Again, I don't have a whole lot of problem with that with new construction, but they apply the same standards of new construction to home remodels. Now, it is a completely different thing to build a home from the ground up versus taking an old home and remodeling it. And it can be extremely difficult and extremely expensive in order to, when you're doing a basic remodel of a home, to then also have to retrofit that home or basically bring it up to code, which is what the county or the city is going to require, because now they are involved. They're going to come in there and say, okay, you need more outlets in here. You need this type of wiring. You need this type of breakers, et cetera, et cetera. Now you have to bring everything up to code. That's frustrating. That's expensive. That's costly, time consuming. Nobody wants to have to do that. But unfortunately, that is what ends up happening when you have the city and or the county involved. And yes, I have referenced the city and the county multiple times because they both have their own permitting divisions. And this is, again, one of the strange and confusing things about it, where I understand that if a house falls within city limits, then it's supposed to be a city permit, basically, rather than a county permit. Well, I had a house recently that I purchased that someone had started the work on it, but hadn't gotten it finished. So they had permitted some of it, but they hadn't finished it, and so I had to come in and had to have my licensed contractor pull permits for us to then go do some work. But the home was in city limits, but it had county permits, and my contractor was like, "Oh, that's good. We want that." Because the county typically is not as strict as the city. But what happens then if the city clipboard warrior comes around and sees, oh, they're doing a bunch of work on this house. It's been permitted by the county, but this is our jurisdiction. I don't know. It's very weird. It's not nearly as organized as it should be, and it's not nearly as straightforward as it should be. I've been in their office. It's a mess. The one in County Square, very, disorganized in a lot of different ways. And so there's a lot of stuff that they, in my opinion, need to do in order to clean up their operations. But at the end of the day, here's the thing. A lot of people get by without permitting work. I mean, a lot of people remodel kitchens without permitting. A lot of people remodel bathrooms without permitting. And there's kind of this unwritten rule that a lot of people follow, and a lot of contractors will as well, that if you aren't doing anything major on the exterior, not making any major exterior changes to siding, roofs, windows, etc., you can probably get by without permitting. But if you get caught, you can get in big trouble. Okay? Now, what does that mean? Well, I'll tell you a couple of stories. I mentioned this one a little while back, but I bought a property last year. It was actually a couple of properties that were together on the same lot, 2 duplexes, and they were not in good condition at all when I purchased them. That was why the seller was selling them. And I try to be a good landlord where I try to make sure that the properties that my tenants are in good condition. And so I immediately knew there was water coming into one of the units through the roof. We needed to replace that roof. The windows were awful. The windows needed to be replaced. My insurance wouldn't even insure it with the windows that were currently there. So we had to do all this stuff. And it fell through the cracks that that did not get permitted. And I kid you not, the day after the roof job started, the county was posting stickers all over the property telling me that it needed to be permitted. If it was not permitted within a certain number of days, that the work would be shut down, et cetera, et cetera. And here it is. We're just trying to make this property livable. And I mean, calm down. Like, we'll pay you your $45 for the permit. But, let's just kind of chill out a little bit here. Let us get the work done so that these people have a place that isn't leaking water all over their heads, right? And so, again, in an effort to do quote-unquote good, the county ends up hurting the very people it's trying to help. In an effort to ensure that we installed a roof correctly, they were dragging out a job that was trying to keep them from having a leaky roof over their heads. So it's just kind of a joke. I know someone else recently, I just spoke to someone else recently that he flipped a lot of houses, and apparently it became known by the county that he was flipping all these houses without getting the work permitted. He was doing it under the radar. Now, why do people want to do that? It's not so much trying to avoid the county or the city from having their fingers over everything, although that's certainly a part of it, but more a lot of the cheapest contractors around here, handymen, women, whatever, typically are not licensed because that costs a lot more money than to just, be a handy person. So a lot of people that flip houses, they have their own crew, and their crew is not run by a licensed contractor. And so here's the thing. In order to get permits, it has to be with a licensed contractor, but the county and the city require that. Well, that obviously is a problem if you don't have a licensed contractor being the point person. There are sometimes contractors that are willing to pull a permit for someone else using their own crew, but they usually charge a substantial amount of money for that because that's risky for them. Most contractors don't want to take on that risk. They don't know who these subs are. They don't want to get sued for something. And so that's where the rubber meets the road. But the county found out that this guy had been doing this, had been using his own crew to do a lot of work that hadn't been permitted on a lot of houses. And so they started going through Zillow and finding all the properties that he had owned and sold that he had done work to. And they fined this person $25,000 and then made him write letters to every single person he had sold a house to, telling those people that the work that had been done to the house had not been permitted and it may not be safe, something to that effect. And so, yeah, they can be out for blood. And let me tell you, those clipboard warriors, they don't joke around. They are ready to pounce. They're like sharks in the water. When they smell blood, they start circling. And so you have to be aware of that. Another story I told a while back, this was one of the most frustrating ones for me personally. I was the listing agent for a house that had permitted everything. They had done everything by the book, finished the renovation. We were all good to go, listed the house, and we went under contract. And after being under contract, a clipboard warrior from, I think it was the county, came by and said, no, I'm sorry, in this area, your driveway can only be 10 feet wide, and you installed a 15-foot wide driveway here. Well, down the street are multiple homes with bigger driveways, circular driveways, all sorts of different driveways, but they have been grandfathered in because this house was a recent remodel. They were not allowed to have the 15-foot driveway. Well, they had to cut it down, and cutting it down from 15 to 10 feet turns it from a 2-car driveway to a 1-car. That was a big deal for the people that were now under contract to purchase the home. And so we ended up losing that contract because of the county. And the part that infuriates me the most out of all of that is people are always going to have people over to their homes, right? And this is a short single-car driveway now that it had to be cut down to 10 feet. Anytime anyone came over to visit that house, or anytime someone does come over to visit that house, they have to park on the street. And so, and it's a narrow street. And so literally the county was forcing more clutter and traffic on the street over 5 feet of concrete. It was a joke, frustrating. But the worst part about it was that they had actually attempted to permit everything and had attempted to go by the book and still ran into problems with the county. They had additional expense that hurt their home value. They were not able to sell the home for as much after they cut it down and lost their first contract as they originally were. So it's frustrating. And yes, I do like to vent about this. Here's the thing, at the end of the day, the permits are not that expensive. Some of the permits are like $15, $25, $50. I mean, the permits themselves are relatively cheap, but the whole problem is that then the county and then the city are involved, and then you have to have a licensed South Carolina contractor, which many of us don't want to use. Particularly, if it's just a simple job, you shouldn't need to have a licensed contractor come in there and do it. just to say that there is a licensed contractor involved. It's just a ridiculous thing because they don't even do the work. That's the thing. They will just sub it out to one of their subs. Why can't you just go to the sub directly and go about it that way? Well, no, the county, the city, they won't allow that. Now, there is one exception, though, and this is a very important exception. There is one exception, and that is that if you are an owner-occupant, you own the house, you live in the house, you may pull your own permits. You're allowed to do that in that one situation. I think the thinking there is that it's your home, and so if you hire people to do the work and they completely jack it up, you're going to be more invested in making sure that the home, that the work is done properly so that the home that you're living in is not falling apart. So I believe that's the thinking there. But even then, it's not clear cut on multifamily properties, for instance. So when it comes to both property taxes in South Carolina, and also when it comes to getting loans, a duplex, triplex, or quadruplex can be owner occupied. And if you owner occupy one unit of those, which of course you can't owner occupy multiple of the units, well, I guess in theory you could, but it wouldn't make sense. But if you owner occupy, for instance, one unit of a quadruplex, that is considered an owner occupied quad for the purposes of everything except permitting. And this is not clear. I could not find anything about this on the county or the city's websites, but I personally witnessed someone in the county office at one point trying to get permits on a duplex that they were doing work on that was not livable, and they were planning to move into it, but they couldn't move into it yet because it wasn't livable, and they needed to get the work permitted. And the county wouldn't allow it because the county said, well, a duplex is a rental property. And this person was like, well, I'm owner occupying it though. No, a duplex is inherently a rental property. You have to have a licensed contractor come and pull this permit. And so again, it's kind of like, cutting off your nose to spite your face. That is what I feel like so frequently is what code enforcement and permit office, what they're doing, the clipboard warriors that are forcing people to go through all this red tape just to do simple things and just to make properties livable. And it's for the best of all of us that we update our homes and that we make sure that properties are livable and that we replace roofs and all of these different things. But the county, the city, they keep doing things to not make it simple. And of course, we've talked about this before. All of this also impacts housing affordability in a lot of different ways. None of them good. So beware the clipboard warriors. Know what you are getting into when you permit a house, or when you choose to not permit work that is being done. Be careful if you're flipping houses and trying to do it without a permit, because I had one recently where it showed up on an inspection report. Had the work for this home been permitted, we would see XYZ. There was something electrical in the house that wasn't broken, but it just wasn't up to code. And the inspector on the inspection report, I felt like it was kind of a silly thing to put on an inspection report, but kind of threw shade at the seller, saying, if this had been permitted, this work would have been done. So, and as I already said, my story from earlier, someone got a very hefty fine and could potentially have been sued by the people that he had to write letters to based on the county intervening and getting upset with him for not permitting work. So be careful out there. This is just something that we have to deal with. It's something we have to figure out and work with. And unfortunately, it's not going away. The county, the city, they keep getting stricter. They're only getting stricter. they're forcing a lot more things, and now in the subdivisions need to have all this green space and all these different requirements as well. They keep making it more and more difficult. They're trying to push more costs onto developers. It's not going to have a long-term positive impact, in my opinion, but it's something that we have to be aware of and that we have to deal with regardless. And so make sure, at the end of the day, I have to tell you, make sure that you get your work permitted. The county and the city both have websites that are confusing, but that you can go to and look at the list of things that need to be permitted and the things that they are okay with not permitting. And so go ahead and look at that before you do a bunch of work. Make sure that you're in compliance. And that's it for today's episode. Nice short one. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope it made you angry at the county and the city. But that you understand the importance of permitting and the potential pitfalls there. If you have any questions, let me know. All of my contact information is in the show notes. Rate, review, subscribe to the show, and have a great rest of the week.